What would you do if the person sleeping next to you wasn't who they claimed to be? Every year, over 25,000 Americans fall victim to romance scams, losing more than $300 million collectively. But here's the terrifying truth that most people don't realize. Seniors over 60 are targeted 3 times more often than younger adults. Why? Because predators know that loneliness makes us vulnerable, and desperation makes us blind to danger. Have you ever met someone online who seemed too good to be true? Someone who shared your interests perfectly, understood your pain and made you feel special again after years of feeling invisible? If you're nodding your head right now, you need to hear this story. Today, we're exploring one of the most devastating cases I've ever encountered. A romance that started with hope and ended in absolute horror. This is the story of Margaret Thornfield, a 60-year-old retired teacher who thought she had found her soulmate online. Instead, she found her killer. Before we begin, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because the cases we cover on True Crime Journal HQ could literally save your life or the life of someone you love. Every story we tell comes with lessons that could prevent you from becoming the next victim. Margaret's story isn't just about murder, it's about manipulation, so calculated, so methodical, that it fooled everyone around her. Her children, her friends, even her neighbors, who watched this man slowly take control of her life, her finances, and ultimately, her future. This case will make you question everything you think you know about online dating, about trust, and about the people who prey on our most basic human need, the need to be loved. What makes this story even more chilling is that the man Margaret married, the man she trusted with her heart and her life, wasn't even who he claimed to be. His real name wasn't Marcus Rodriguez. He wasn't a construction worker from Phoenix. He didn't have a daughter he was fighting for custody of. In fact, almost everything he told Margaret was a lie, a carefully constructed web of deception designed to drain her bank accounts and disappear. But Margaret discovered the truth at the worst possible moment. She learned who he really was during their honeymoon at a luxury resort on the Oregon coast. 2 days after saying, "I do," Margaret confronted the man she had just married about his real identity. That confrontation would be her last. By the time you finish watching this video, you'll understand exactly how predators like Marcus operate, what warning signs Margaret missed, and most importantly, how to protect yourself and your loved ones from falling into the same deadly trap. But first, let me tell you about a woman who believed that love could find you at any age. Margaret Thornfield had spent 8 long years alone. After losing her husband of 32 years to cancer, this retired elementary school teacher from Portland, Oregon, had slowly rebuilt her life piece by piece. At 60, she had her comfortable home in the Pearl District, her volunteer work at the local animal shelter, and her 2 adult children, David and Susan, who worried constantly about her isolation. Those winter months of 2019 hit Margaret particularly hard. The holidays had passed, and the grey Portland skies seemed to mirror the loneliness she felt every evening in her empty house. When David and Susan suggested she try online dating, Margaret initially resisted. "Who would want a 60-year-old widow?" she asked. But eventually, curiosity won. Margaret started cautiously on senior dating sites, but after weeks of disappointing matches, she expanded her search to broader platforms. That's when her profile caught the attention of Marcus Rodriguez, a 29-year-old construction worker who claimed to be looking for something deeper than casual dating. Marcus's profile was impressive. His photos showed a handsome, well-built man with kind eyes and a warm smile. But what truly captured Margaret's attention was his bio. He described himself as someone who valued wisdom over beauty, depth over superficiality. He wrote about his difficult divorce, his custody battle for his young daughter, and his belief that older women possessed a maturity and grace that younger women lacked. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. Marcus was articulate, asking thoughtful questions about Margaret's teaching career and her volunteer work. He shared stories about his daughter, how she loved to read, how he struggled to help her with homework while working construction. He spoke about his ex-wife's alleged abuse and his determination to create a stable home for his child, Within days, Marcus was texting Margaret good morning and good night. He sent her articles about education reform, knowing she'd appreciate them. He remembered details about her day, asked about her volunteer shifts, and even researched the animal shelter online to ask specific questions about her work there. The age gap concerned Margaret's friends immediately. 31 years? Her neighbour Mrs. Patterson questioned. What does a 29-year-old want with a woman your age? But Marcus seemed to anticipate these concerns. He arranged video calls at regular times, sent thoughtful gifts, books about teaching, donations to the animal shelter in Margaret's name. The meeting with her children was masterfully planned. Marcus chose Margaret's favourite restaurant, arrived early, and stood when David and Susan entered. He asked about their father's memory, expressed genuine interest in their careers, and never once seemed defensive about the age difference. He was respectful, well-spoken, and appeared genuinely devoted to their mother. But over the following months, cracks began to appear in Marcus's perfect facade. His stories about his past shifted subtly. Sometimes his ex-wife was physically abusive. Other times, she was simply incompatible. His daughter's age seemed to change. Sometimes she was 6, sometimes 8. He never seemed to have actual custody visits, despite claiming to fight for his rights. By month 4, Marcus began mentioning financial difficulties. The custody battle was draining his savings, he explained. Construction work had slowed during the pandemic. When Margaret offered to help with a few $100s for legal fees, Marcus was initially resistant. The perfect gentleman who didn't want to burden her. But he eventually accepted, promising to pay her back. The requests escalated gradually. Medical expenses for his daughter, emergency car repairs to get to court hearings. Each time Marcus seemed genuinely reluctant to ask, making Margaret feel like she was the one insisting on helping. David grew suspicious when his attempts to verify Marcus's background through social media revealed virtually nothing. No long-term friends, no family members, no employment history that could be confirmed. When he expressed these concerns to his mother, Margaret became defensive, accusing her son of being jealous of her happiness. But what Maggie didn't know was that Marcus Rodriguez didn't exist, and the man she was falling in love with was about to move in for the kill. By Christmas 2019, Marcus had convinced Margaret that living together would solve many of their problems. He could save money on rent, help with household expenses, and they could spend more quality time together. What seemed like a natural progression in their relationship was actually a calculated move to gain complete access to Margaret's life. The moment Marcus moved into Margaret's Pearl District home, the dynamic shifted dramatically. He began making subtle changes, rearranging furniture, suggesting they eat at different restaurants, gradually taking over daily decisions. When Margaret questioned these changes, Marcus would become emotional, reminding her of his difficult past and how much he needed stability. Within weeks, Marcus had positioned himself as the household's financial manager. He offered to help Margaret with her online banking, claiming his generation was better with technology. While Margaret volunteered at the animal shelter, Marcus spent hours on her computer, memorizing passwords, studying her financial statements, and slowly gaining access to her accounts. Margaret's children noticed their mother's transformation during their weekly visits. She seemed anxious, constantly checking her phone for Marcus's messages. When they tried to discuss family matters, Margaret would defer to Marcus, asking for his opinion on decisions she had made independently for years. The isolation tactics were subtle but effective. Marcus would create conflicts around family gatherings, claiming he felt unwelcome, or that Margaret's children were trying to control her. He encouraged Margaret to spend less time with her long-term friends, suggesting they were jealous of her happiness. Slowly, Margaret's world began to revolve entirely around Marcus and his needs. Margaret's neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, witnessed disturbing changes from her kitchen window. She heard Marcus's voice rising during phone calls, his tone becoming aggressive when he thought no one was listening. On one particularly troubling occasion, she watched Marcus forcibly grab Margaret's purse from her hands in their driveway, his grip tight enough to make Margaret wince. When Mrs. Patterson mentioned her concerns to Margaret at the mailbox the next day, Margaret quickly dismissed the incident as a misunderstanding. "Marcus was just helping me find my keys," she explained. But her nervous laughter and inability to make eye contact told a different story. The proposal came on Valentine's Day 2020, just as COVID-19 began dominating news headlines. Marcus presented Margaret with a modest ring, nothing like the expensive jewelry she might have expected, given her substantial financial contributions to their relationship. But Margaret was too overwhelmed by the romantic gesture to question why the man she had been supporting couldn't afford a better ring. Marcus suggested they plan a small, intimate ceremony for September 2020. The COVID restrictions provided perfect cover for limiting the guest list to immediate family only. No extended family, no long-term friends, no one who might ask difficult questions about Marcus's background or their whirlwind relationship. During the wedding planning, Margaret's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would make decisions, then immediately call Marcus to confirm them. She seemed constantly worried about disappointing him, often changing plans at the last minute based on his preferences. David and Susan watched helplessly as their independent, confident mother transformed into someone they barely recognized. The wedding was set for September 12, 2020. The honeymoon would be at the Stephanie Inn on the Oregon coast, a destination Margaret had dreamed of visiting her entire life. She had no idea that this dream vacation would become her final trip, or that the man she was about to marry was already planning her death. The honeymoon destination became their first major disagreement as a married couple. Marcus had pushed for somewhere exotic, Hawaii, Mexico, anywhere that would be difficult for authorities to investigate if something went wrong. But Margaret insisted on the Oregon coast, particularly the Stephanie Inn in Cannon Beach, that she had always wanted to visit. Marcus's frustration was barely contained. He argued that they deserved something more glamorous after everything they had been through. But Margaret held firm, citing COVID restrictions and her comfort with familiar territory. This decision would ultimately save the investigation and ensure Marcus couldn't escape justice. They checked into the luxury oceanfront resort on Tuesday, September 15, 2020. The staff immediately noticed the couple's strange dynamic. Marcus dominated every interaction, speaking for Margaret and showing visible irritation whenever she expressed her own preferences. Hotel manager Jennifer Walsh later testified that she had never seen such controlling behavior from a guest. During their first dinner at the hotel restaurant, server Lisa Martinez observed troubling interactions between the newlyweds. Marcus consumed multiple drinks while Margaret barely touched her wine. When Margaret tried to order the salmon, Marcus interrupted, insisting she get the chicken instead. Most disturbing was when he gripped her arm during conversation, his fingers pressing so firmly that Margaret visibly winced. The second day brought escalating tension. Housekeeping staff reported hearing raised voices from their suite during the afternoon. Marcus had discovered Margaret using her phone, and he demanded to know who she was contacting. Margaret had been texting her daughter Susan, sharing photos of their room, and expressing how happy she was to finally visit Cannon Beach. That evening's dinner was a disaster. Marcus had been drinking heavily since the afternoon, and his mask of charm was slipping. When Margaret suggested they take a walk on the beach after dinner, Marcus snapped at her in front of other diners. Restaurant manager Tom Bradley approached their table, asking if everything was all right. Marcus forced a smile and apologized, claiming he was just tired from the wedding preparations. They returned to their suite around 10 p.m. What happened next would shock investigators and reveal the true monster behind Marcus's facade. At 11:30 p.m., guests in the adjacent room heard what sounded like a heated argument. Margaret's voice, raised for the first time anyone could remember, was demanding answers. "Who are you really?" she kept asking. "I found the documents, Marcus. I know who you are." Marcus's response was immediate and violent. The sounds of struggle lasted approximately 15 minutes. By 11:45 p.m., the suite had fallen silent. Hotel security cameras captured Marcus leaving the resort at 12:47 a.m., carrying a large duffel bag and appearing agitated. He drove to a secluded stretch of coastline 2 miles away, where he attempted to dispose of evidence in the tidal pools. He returned to the hotel at 3:15 a.m., using a side entrance to avoid the main lobby cameras. The next morning, housekeeping made the gruesome discovery. Margaret's body was found in the bathroom, having suffered multiple blunt force trauma injuries. The murder weapon, a heavy metal sculpture from their room, was missing, later found in that duffel bag weighted down in the ocean. The investigation revealed that Margaret had discovered Marcus's real identity during their honeymoon. She had found documents in his luggage, credit cards, identification, and correspondence under the name Michael Brennan. When she confronted him about the deception, Marcus realized his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. I want you to pause this video for a moment and leave a comment below. Looking back at this story, what red flags do you think Margaret's family should have recognized? What would you have done differently? Your insights might help someone else avoid this tragedy. The truth about Marcus Rodriguez was about to shock everyone who thought they knew this case. Thursday morning, September 17th, 2020, started like any other day at the Stephanie Inn. Housekeeping supervisor Maria Santos knocked on the door of the oceanfront suite at 11 a.m., calling out her standard greeting. When no one responded, she used her master key to enter, expecting to find the newlyweds had simply stepped out for breakfast. What Maria found instead would haunt her for the rest of her life. Margaret's body lay in the bathroom, blood pooled around her head, her face barely recognizable from the repeated blows. Maria's screams echoed through the hallway as she stumbled backward, immediately calling hotel security. Within minutes, the Cannon Beach Police Department arrived, followed by Oregon State Police detectives. The crime scene told a brutal story. Blood spatter patterns indicated a sustained attack, with Margaret suffering at least 12 separate blows to the head and face. The missing metal sculpture from the room's decor immediately caught investigators' attention. Detective Sarah Chen began reviewing the hotel's security footage, while her partner canvassed the staff for witness statements. The cameras revealed a damning timeline. Marcus leaving alone at 12:47 a.m. with a heavy duffel bag, returning hours later without it, his clothing different from when he left. The search for Marcus began immediately. His rental car was found abandoned in the hotel parking lot, keys still in the ignition. Hotel staff reported that he had asked about checkout procedures the previous day, unusual for someone supposedly enjoying their honeymoon. The front desk clerk remembered Marcus asking about the earliest ferry schedules to Seattle. By Friday morning, the investigation had expanded statewide. Marcus's photo was distributed to every law enforcement agency in Oregon and Washington. Transit authorities were alerted, and roadblocks were established on major highways heading north. The FBI joined the investigation when it became clear that Marcus had likely fled across state lines. The breakthrough came when a Coast Guard patrol discovered the weighted duffel bag in a tidal pool exactly where security footage showed Marcus had driven. Inside, investigators found bloodied clothing, Margaret's jewelry, and the murder weapon, the hotel room's decorative bronze sculpture, still covered in blood and hair. Meanwhile, Margaret's son David had been trying to contact his mother since Wednesday evening. When his calls went straight to voicemail and the hotel staff became evasive about his mother's whereabouts, David drove to Cannon Beach himself. His arrival at the crime scene Friday afternoon provided investigators with crucial background information about Marcus's suspicious behavior. The manhunt intensified over the weekend. Marcus had a 2-day head start, but investigators were tracking his movements through credit card transactions and surveillance footage from gas stations and convenience stores along Interstate 5. He was heading north towards Seattle, staying at cheap motels and paying cash when possible. On Sunday, September 20th, Seattle police received a tip from a motel clerk who recognized Marcus from news reports. Officers surrounded the Starlight Motel on Aurora Avenue, where they found Marcus hiding in room 237, surrounded by multiple fake identification documents and over $15,000 in cash, money that had been withdrawn from Margaret's accounts. The arrest revealed the shocking truth that would change everything investigators thought they knew about this case. Marcus Rodriguez didn't exist. The man they had been hunting was actually Michael Brennan, a 29-year-old career criminal with a history of fraud and domestic violence stretching back over a decade. Michael's real background was disturbing. He had no legitimate employment history, no construction experience, and certainly no daughter. Instead, he had perfected the art of targeting vulnerable women through dating sites, creating elaborate false identities to gain their trust and access their finances. As news of Michael's arrest spread, other victims began coming forward. Linda Patterson from Sacramento reported losing $25,000 to a man matching Michael's description who had called himself David Martinez. Carol Williams from Phoenix described an identical romance scam where Marcus Rodriguez had stolen $18,000 before disappearing. Janet Foster from Denver recognized Michael's photo as Robert Johnson, who had manipulated her for 6 months before vanishing with her credit cards. The pattern was chilling in its consistency. Michael targeted recently widowed women over 50, studied their social media profiles to create compatible personas, then systematically isolated them from family and friends while draining their bank accounts. Margaret was different only because she had discovered his deception, making her the first victim he felt compelled to murder. Detective Chen's investigation revealed that Michael had been operating under false identities for years, moving from city to city, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. He had perfected his technique through practice, learning from each victim what worked best to maintain the deception. But this time, Michael had made a fatal mistake. He had chosen a victim with a family who wouldn't stop searching for answers. The trial of Michael Brennan began in March 2021, and what emerged in that Portland courtroom shocked even seasoned prosecutors. Over 8 days of testimony, the full scope of Michael's deception was laid bare for the world to see. Prosecutor Rachel Martinez presented evidence of Michael's systematic manipulation spanning multiple states and victims. The jury heard from forensic accountants who traced $127,000 stolen from Margaret's accounts, digital forensics experts who revealed Michael's fake online identities, and behavioral analysts who explained how predators target vulnerable victims. The prosecution's case was devastating. Hotel staff testified about Michael's controlling behavior. Security footage showed his movements on the night of the murder, and the physical evidence was overwhelming. Most damning was Michael's own confession, recorded during his arrest, where he admitted to creating the Marcus Rodriguez identity specifically to target Margaret. Defense attorneys attempted to argue that the murder was unpremeditated, claiming Michael had panicked when Margaret discovered his identity. But the evidence told a different story. Michael had researched the hotel's layout, studied the tidal patterns for evidence disposal, and even purchased the murder weapons replacement online days before the honeymoon. On April 15, 2021, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges: first-degree murder, multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Judge Patricia Williams sentenced Michael to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling his crimes a calculated assault on the most vulnerable members of our society. Margaret's children, David and Susan, used their victim impact statements to announce the creation of the Margaret Thornfield Foundation, dedicated to educating seniors about online dating safety and romance scams. The foundation has since helped over 500 families recognize and report similar fraud attempts. Through their work, the Thornfield family has identified key warning signs that everyone should recognize. First, be suspicious of anyone who refuses video calls or phone conversations, especially if they claim technical difficulties. Second, watch for inconsistent stories about their past, family, or employment. Third, never send money, no matter how compelling the sob story. Fourth, be wary of anyone who pushes for quick commitment or tries to isolate you from family and friends. Most importantly, if someone seems too good to be true, they probably are. Michael succeeded because he told Margaret exactly what she wanted to hear, creating a perfect match that existed only in her imagination. The foundation also emphasizes the importance of family vigilance. David and Susan now speak at senior centers, urging adult children to stay involved in their parents' dating lives without being judgmental. They stress that love can happen at any age, but safety should always come first. This case saved lives through awareness. Since Margaret's story became public, dozens of potential victims have recognized similar patterns and contacted authorities before becoming victims themselves. If this story has opened your eyes to the dangers of online romance scams, please share this video with someone you love. Your simple act of sharing could save a life. The more people who understand these warning signs, the fewer victims predators like Michael Brennan can claim. Margaret's death was tragic, but her legacy is powerful, and it's still saving lives today. Maggie's story isn't an isolated incident. The Federal Trade Commission reports that romance scams claimed over $1.3 billion from victims in 2023 alone. Adults over 60 account for nearly 40% of these cases, losing an average of $18,000 each. But Maggie lost far more than money. She lost her life. These predators specifically target older adults because they often have accumulated wealth, may feel lonely after losing a spouse, and grew up in an era when people's word meant something. They exploit basic human needs for companionship and love, turning our greatest strengths into vulnerabilities. The numbers are staggering, but behind each statistic is a real person. A grandmother who thought she'd found love again, a widower seeking companionship, a retiree hoping to share golden years with someone special. Marcus, or Michael, represents hundreds of predators operating right now, crafting false identities and hunting for their next victim. Today, Maggie's children have transformed their grief into action. The Margaret Thompson Foundation educates seniors about online dating safety and provides resources for families concerned about potential scams. They've helped over 2,000 people recognize warning signs and avoid dangerous situations. Her daughter Sarah speaks at community centers, sharing her mother's story to prevent others from experiencing their family's nightmare. "Mom would want her death to mean something," Sarah often says. "If telling her story saves even one person, then maybe we can find some peace." The foundation has partnered with local law enforcement to create rapid response protocols when families report suspicious relationships. They've also lobbied for stronger verification requirements on dating platforms, changes that could have saved Maggie's life. Trust forms the foundation of all human relationships. We want to believe in love, in second chances, in the possibility that someone wonderful might enter our lives when we need them most. This basic human optimism is beautiful, and it's exactly what predators like Marcus exploit. Maggie wasn't naive or foolish. She was a loving woman who dared to hope again after loss. Her vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was courage. The tragedy isn't that she trusted, it's that someone so evil chose to destroy that trust. We must find balance between protecting ourselves and remaining open to genuine connection. Love requires vulnerability, but it should never require silence about our concerns or isolation from family who care about us. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to stay informed about cases like these. Hit that like button to help this story reach others who need to hear it. Share it with someone you care about, especially if they're navigating the world of online dating. Stay vigilant, but don't let fear rob you of connection.